You already know where this one's going. We're gonna talk about why Steve should have died. I feel like at this point, basically every person ever, at least on the internet, has had their turn just tearing apart Stranger Things. Especially this latest season, which, you know. And yeah, I'm doing the same thing, so I'll say, out of the many criticisms and plot holes, one of the most prominent has definitely been how easy the final battle was, and by extension, nobody died. And I guess since the finale, that really has gotten me thinking, whether or not losing some of these iconic characters would have improved the season, even if nothing else were changed. And that's kind of what I want to discuss today, because to me, that's definitely one of the most blatant problems. I will say that I personally do prefer having higher stakes in a story like this and losing characters in a story like this. And I think Stranger Things really has evolved. You know, in the beginning, it was definitely more of an atmospheric sci-fi mystery with like horror elements and like the 80s throughout. But for the most part, it didn't need deaths to be interesting because it had more than that. And if you compare it to really the last 2 seasons of the show, at that point it really is just all action, adventure, spectacle. And when the stakes basically hinge on this, I mean, really what's become like a war arc in the show, character deaths seem like more of a given. Also, with how big the cast is, they can spare a few, I think. You could lose 10 characters and still have like more than a dozen left. You could definitely, I'm just saying, just throwing that out there. But really, in general, I think the biggest problem with not losing any of these characters during the season is that it really just makes Vecna and the entire Upside Down seem really incompetent. Like, there are a lot of scenes where he's got a character dead to rights, and he just doesn't do anything. And, you know, initially it's kind of built up as, oh, maybe that's part of his plan, but it's not. By the end of it, we find out he just let the characters go. And honestly, that goes for most of the monsters in the show. Look no further than the scene with Karen and the wine glass. It's a well set up scene, I think, but the actual interaction with the monster is insane. It just stands there and takes the stabs from the broken wine glass. And that one's specifically funny to me because I do remember hearing in an interview with the Duffers that they included that attack on the Wheeler house in the beginning of the season as a way to show the audience that this time around, nobody's safe. And listen, I find it funny because I feel like for me and for probably most people, after that scene, it basically solidified that nobody was gonna die. I mean, for Christ's sake, they wouldn't even kill Ted Wheeler, and he has no stake in the plot. So after seeing that, there's no way in hell you're convincing anybody that you're gonna kill Dustin or Steve or basically anyone the audience cares about. I really do think, even if it'd just been those two, it would have at least improved the first half of the season. Of course, I would hope that they would do something else in the second half, but we'll get to that. And this is actually a half-decent segue into what, honestly, you probably want to hear. That's who should have died. Because I think at this point we've established that, if nothing else, killing off characters would have raised the stakes. So the question is, who should have gone? I feel like there's a couple. First off, and honestly, this is an easy one to me, I was actually a little surprised he survived the season. Murray. Because he really has no reason to be in the story after supplying the characters with resources at the beginning of the season. Like, he doesn't really do much. And I feel like that goes for a lot of the characters, but him in particular kind of just like hangs around and doesn't do anything that important. I can't remember anything he does in the final season other than drive the car. So that's an easy one. I would say that's like a first half of the season kind of death. And now getting to some of the bigger ones, and I admit this is probably where I'm going to lose a good deal of people. I do think we probably should have lost Steve. Now, hear me out. I think that overall, his arc in this season with Dustin really wasn't that bad. I actually think that's probably the best part and the most consistent part. Definitely the best acted. Both of them did a very good job. And I think after the conclusion of that arc in episode 6, it would actually be pretty fitting and a reasonable end to his character if, say, when everyone shows up to get them out of the Upside Down, they're on their way out and somehow they're cut off by demos of some kind, or Vecna himself, and while the character's trying to escape, Steve needs to make some kind of sacrifice play, maybe to save Dustin, maybe to save Eleven, whatever, something that Mother Steve would do. And I think that would be a very good moment for him, because really for the rest of the season, he doesn't have anything to do. And I also feel like this would be the really easy way to just wrap up the Nancy, Steve, Jonathan love triangle. I'm gonna be honest, I don't think anybody was invested in that by this 5th season. It's been going since the beginning of the show. And them dragging it out for so long was miserable, especially because it didn't even go anywhere. So that would give you a logical conclusion, easy out for that. And honestly, that would raise the stakes big time. I mean, imagine how pissed off the fan base would be. You would have so many videos, reactions of people crying, people losing their minds. But honestly, that's kind of what you want if you want your show to do well going into the finale. You want people to be invested. And that gives both the audience and the characters in the story some real reason to want to kill the villain, because now we've seen that he can kill some of them. And I think especially if you put that at like the end of episode 6 or beginning of episode 7, it really, really builds up to the finale, that now shit is serious. Now listen, in the end, I get that the Duffer Brothers really, really wanted to do this big final epilogue, send everyone off, and it wouldn't have felt the same if we were missing a few characters. It's strange to me because I feel like we're almost treating it like losing them would be like a real loss. Like, they're fictional characters. You're allowed to kill your own fictional character in your own story. What's stopping you? Like, when you constantly very clearly show that you're not willing to do that, that's when the audience is going to lose faith. And I would say that kind of sums up season 5, for better or for worse. Anyway, all this said, in closing, do I think that killing off more characters, or really any characters, would have helped the finale? Would it have saved it? I'll say I don't think it would have saved the finale. I do think, assuming we only change who died, or we add in deaths, the finale would still be pretty lackluster. But I do think the build-up to that finale would be much better, because at the very least, there'd be a precedent set that characters can die, and therefore might. I think as it is, it was just the case where you knew they were all going to be fine. Well, and really you were going into the finale to see how they'd go about, winning, but you knew they were all getting out. So I think that's really the only difference it would make. So I don't know if I entirely agree with the people who would say that that alone would have made it better, but I do think, to an extent, they're onto something. I do think it would have improved things a lot, at least the stakes, and then, combine it with just some better writing, preferably not written by ChatGPT, and, maybe you could have had a pretty good conclusion. But, as it is, I'm going to stand by what I've always said. I think season 4 should have been the end. I think they could have made it a real nice finale, but they didn't, and here we are, so that's alright. Now I guess we'll see where that spin-off goes, that animated show. It looks fine.